And we're back with the bitches. Papa Poo Poo and Papa Pee Pee. That's you, and me.
What up?
What up? I haven't seen you in like 10 minutes.
I know, it feels like forever. It feels like a lifetime. What you been up
Any
to? What you been thinking?
any moment without you is a lifetime. I
How we doing,
went
puppies? What up?
downstairs and shoved some snacks in my face and made a cup of coffee.
I refilled mine, as I just told you. Because in the
Yes.
last episode we recorded, I was chugging it, trying to wake up.
You seem a bit more awake now.
A bit.
Are the babies helping?
The babies?
The babies.
Oh. The babies, yes. I thought you
You
were talking
set
about
the
my
babies
dogs for
to
a
the
second.
I had a feeling you were going to, that's why I said it like that. Well, do you have anything you would like to discuss?
Nah.
You
I
sure?
have a lot of... Yeah. I have
So
a
you
lot
have
of
stuff you
info,
just...
so...
Okay. Well, then that just makes me have a question for you. What are you going to educate us on today, Papa PP?
So, this episode is going to be about the disappearance of Emma Fillipoff.
Ooh, I've never heard of this.
I first heard this story back in like 2020 when I was watching a Bailey Sarian video.
Oh.
It just like has stuck with me ever since, and her disappearance has been on my list for like, well, honestly, since we started the podcast, and I just like didn't really get into it until last night, which is why I was up till like 1:30.
Yeah.
Before we start, I want to send you a photo of her.
Oh, she's so pretty.
Right?
She kind of reminds me of Linda.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
And then also you, because she's holding that big camera.
And I will be posting photos of her, obviously, with the episode. Emma Fillipoff was born in Perth, Ontario on January 6th, 1986. She had two brothers, one sister. Her mother was a teacher and her father was a part-time artist. Emma was described by her mother as shy, quietly happy, and content with a cascading laugh. She had brown eyes, unusually long brown hair that possibly reached her waist, and a tan complexion.
A
She
cascading
excelled in art,
smile.
a
That's so
cascading
beautiful.
laugh. Yeah,
Oh, laugh. I'm sorry. Duh. But that's
yeah,
just a beautiful way to put that.
I know. She sounds like a really cool person. She excelled in art and chose to take up dance instead of sports like her siblings. There was never one competitive bone in her body. From a very young age, Emma had a huge heart and was a sensitive soul, and she made a habit of keeping all her cards close to the chest.
Okay, she's reminding me more and
After,
more of you.
yeah, I relate to her very much. I think that's why this story kind of stuck with me for so long.
Mm-hmm.
After wanting to live out west for years, Emma made the move from Perth to Victoria in the fall of 2011. She was 25 at the time and had no job or home lined up. And her plan was to figure it out once she got there. And she apparently told a friend that she had a feeling something amazing was going to happen when she got there. After Emma arrived in Victoria, she lived with a childhood friend and the friend's partner for a few months. Eventually, she moved into another unit in the same building. In the winter of 2011, she found employment as a barista at a cafe, but the job did not last very long for her. I'm not sure why, but after 2 or 3 months in Victoria, Emma developed a more transient lifestyle, moving in with another friend for a few months, living at a hotel called Hotel 760, where she also worked cleaning rooms. And she also stayed on a few boats. She slept in the woods, and she sometimes would like sleep in a tree, just like going all
I
over the
like her.
place.
I like her already.
Yeah. From February to November 2012, she also stayed at the Sandy Marion Women's Shelter on a rotating basis, usually for a month at a time. That same year, Emma had obtained a seasonal job at the Inner Harbor Seafood Eatery. It was called Redfish Bluefish, and she was employed during the busy months of 2012 until October 31st, and she was expected to return to the job in February of 2013. While living in Victoria, Emma would regularly check in with her friends and family back home by making occasional phone calls and writing emails. According to friends and family, the emails she wrote were poetic and upbeat. And at this time, nobody knew that Emma was staying in a shelter. They just assumed that she was still staying with a friend. It was said that Emma enjoyed spending time with people in the homeless community, with boat owners and artists down at the Inner Harbor, and with street performers around the town. She made many friends who later described her as free-spirited, creative, adventurous, soft-spoken, private, flighty, highly sensitive to people, brave, and very brave to sleep alone in the woods.
Yeah,
I would never
for
be able
sure.
to do that.
That
Yeah.
I was going to say everything in that description matches you except flighty and brave enough to sleep alone in the woods. Not that you're not brave, but
I
I
wouldn't
just
sleep
don't
alone
think
in the
that's
woods.
something. No.
So it was also said that Emma preferred nature over city life, and she could be found reading in the children's section of the library or quietly meditating in the sun.
I want to hug her.
I know.
She probably wouldn't want one, but I would ask first.
Emma was a skilled chef, photographer, and artist, and she loved to write and maintained several journals and also a blog.
Girl, that's so much I couldn't.
Yeah. So while her beauty and friendly nature attracted the attention of many in Victoria, she only dated one person that year, and the relationship only lasted for about 3 months, and it mutually ended on a positive note. She was reported to have enjoyed drinking and socializing with friends, and she always offered a listening ear to others and freely shared her laughter and joy for life, but was not prone to sharing any inner thoughts or struggles. She would tell people how much she loved her family, but rarely actually talked about them. So, in the summer of 2012, friends said that Emma was in search of a more pure lifestyle. She had quit drinking, she quit smoking cigarettes, and she cut out coffee and sugar. Some claimed that she occasionally would smoke pot, while others reported never seeing her take any kind of drug. She was also vegan and was slowly cutting out any junk food. During this time, a friend who also worked with her at Redfish Bluefish said that she grew very thin and described her as becoming monk-like in her social and eating habits.
Interesting. I'm sorry, I'm going to adjust my sitting position. You can keep going, though.
Yeah, like I kind of just wonder what changed, you know?
Yeah, like the shift in mindset, or I don't know, maybe she didn't like where things were going with her habits. Could be
Yeah,
so many different reasons, honestly.
true. In June or July of 2012, Emma purchased a van with the intention of living in it and traveling. She was super excited about the adventure and independence that the van would bring her. But over time, it started turning into more of a financial burden. It had gotten towed 3 different times. It had all sorts of mechanical issues, and it wasn't turning out to be what Emma thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And allegedly, just before Emma vanished, she had been asking around for a really inexpensive mechanic. So, as winter was coming up, Emma wasn't sure where she'd go to stay safe from the cold. She had started distancing herself from her friends and others. Her friends said she started to become really fearful, withdrawn, and paranoid. In mid November, Emma told a friend that she was leaving Victoria and possibly heading to Salt Spring Island in British Columbia. Other friends were told she was going to sail a boat to Mexico, or that she was heading to San Juan with a man she barely knew, or that she was moving to California, moving to Costa Rica, traveling to Japan with her father, living off grid somewhere in the woods. And she also told a friend that she'd be surprising her family and moving back to Perth. So she told like tons of different stories.
Can I hypothesize?
Yes.
So I'm wondering if there's two things I'm thinking. The first one is maybe she did have a drug addiction and just hid it really well and said that she did all of these things, and when she became quote unquote monk like, people attributed it to her like um health lifestyle changes, but perhaps she had a drug addiction and just masked it that way. And then
Mm.
my second thought would be some sort of extreme trauma or some like mental
That's what
health
my thought
issue,
is.
possibly schizophrenia, because schizophrenia can often have that effect where people are more transient, they can't hold things down, they change stories, they wander a bit more, they kind of
Mhm.
do things more extreme or something along those lines.
That's the one that makes more sense to me, and I think it'll be the one that you lean towards as we go through this a little more.
Okay.
Um, so, entries in Emma's journals suggested that she had been privately suffering with mental health issues as early as the age of 11. A childhood friend and roommate of Emma in Victoria said that she would often see Emma obsessively arranging patterns using objects like feathers, shells, rocks, and even her food. And Emma would sometimes insist that others would participate in these compulsive rituals. That same friend contacted Emma's father out of concern after she woke up one night and found Emma outside in a euphoric state. She was standing high on a grassy hill, just staring up at the stars.
Yeah, that's interesting. It definitely sounds more like mental health to me.
Yeah. But at the same time, like, I can understand why that would be a little concerning, but it seems like something that Emma would have done. Like, not really out of character for her. Just the
The
staring up at the stars thing.
yeah, the stargazing part isn't quite as like alarming to me. It's more the obsessively arranging things in patterns because
Yeah.
to me that's either like OCD or like schizophrenia and doing that to help calm some sort
Yeah.
of demon that's in her head.
Right. So the friend ends up calling Emma's dad, and he reached out to Emma the next day and offered her a plane ticket back home to Perth. But when Emma found out that her friend had contacted her dad, she was really upset about this, and she insisted that she could take care of herself and denied the ticket back home. Her parents were divorced, and Emma's father never told her mother about this incident. And Emma's mom, Shelley, later said that if she had known about this first incident, she would have flown out immediately to check on her.
Mhm. I feel like that's something too, like that probably happens more than we know. One parent hears something when the other one doesn't, especially in a case of divorce. But I feel like with your children, regardless of their age, you gotta
You
share
gotta
that
tell them
information.
everything. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It doesn't matter how old they are, like how
No.
serious you might assume it might be. Like, you are, even if you are divorced, you're still a parenting team, you
Yes.
know?
You are connected by that child forever, and that child's well-being should
Exactly.
be your number one priority. And I mean, we don't know, maybe the dad didn't think the mom would do anything or, whatever, but I feel like if you assume that that person's in a mental capacity to comprehend and care and probably has a decent relationship with the child, then you should tell them. Not blaming the dad,
Yeah.
just saying, like,
No.
in the future, if anything happens like this for anyone that's listening or whatever.
Yeah, he probably just assumed that she was just going through something and that she'd be okay, you know?
Yeah.
So, according to three different friends, Emma had been experiencing ongoing stress due to feeling harassed by someone that she had a bad experience with years ago, back in British Columbia in 2009, where Emma was when Emma was there studying culinary arts. Unfortunately, though, Emma never mentioned any details or told her friends who this stalker was. No name, no
Mm.
description or anything. And she never mentioned this person's name in any of her journals.
Ooh, that's giving some sort of schizophrenic episode to
Hmm.
me, especially if the name isn't in the journals or like there wasn't any more detail because there's not. It's more
Hmm.
like it's a I can't remember the correct word for it, but a figurative person in her head, possibly. Speculation.
Yeah. So, a roommate of Emma's recalls her expressing the need to avoid social situations where she had to interact with men, which was the main reason she chose she always stayed in women only shelters. She never stayed in co ed shelters. Those who knew her in Victoria say Emma seemed friendly, clever, and sociable. However, by early November of 2012, She had grown distant, and friends noticed a dramatic change in her behavior and personality. She refused invitations to go on adventures, canceled a trip to Mexico with a friend at the very last minute, and generally seemed scared to go anywhere that wasn't the pier or the shelter.
So in 2012, she would have been
She was 25.
almost 30. She was 25. Yeah, and that's the time that schizophrenia tends to present the heaviest in people.
Mm-hmm. 2 weeks before she disappeared, a friend recalled driving by the shelter and saw Emma looking cold and wet, standing motionless, staring blankly at a. I copied and pasted this paragraph. So Emma was standing motionless, staring blankly at a murder of crows nearby. Around.
I love it. That's what it's called. It's a murder.
Yeah, it's just not what I would have typed out.
Murder.
Around this time, shelter staff and residents also started to notice signs of paranoia and depression. She kept her curtains drawn at all times and was discovered frantically moving furniture from the shelter out to the curb and across the street because she claimed they were making too much noise and saying things to her. And she also
Oh
began
no.
selling. She started selling, donating, and even throwing away her personal belongings.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, baby.
Yeah, this story makes me so sad, and we'll get into it, but there were people there that wanted to help her, but there was no one who was actually, besides her mom, but her mom was so far away, but like, nobody was like there for her, you know?
Right.
Like, they
Yeah.
recognized that she wasn't okay, um, and they offered help, but they accepted it as soon as she denied help. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and unfortunately, in those types of circumstances, help has to be forced somewhat because.
Yeah.
So, how do I want to say this? So, I don't know what the Canadian health care system is like, especially in 2012, but I do think it's probably better than ours here in the United States. And I would assume that someone who seems to be a danger to themselves or others or is having this type of break could be placed on a forced 72-hour psych hold or however long.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, if she is claiming that the furniture is moving too much and making noise and speaking to her, someone should have said, okay, we need to get a healthcare professional or the authorities involved because most of the time when people have schizophrenia, they don't know what's going on and they can't make the decision to get better because they don't always know that there's something wrong. And to be
Yeah.
able to get better and get help, someone kind of has to force you to do it. So medications mostly can be used to quiet all of those voices so your true voice can come through.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really sad that no one took that initiative. I'm not necessarily saying it was anyone's responsibility, especially at the shelter, but I also feel like, there's mandated reporters and different things, at least here in the US, where if you see something, you have to say something. And if that's similar in Canada, I would assume that the shelter people would be mandated reporters, so they would have to do something.
Well, they do. They call authorities, and I'll tell you right now in this paragraph,
Okay.
but this behavior led shelter staff to suspect she might be suicidal or suffering from mental illness. They were unable to contact her parents due to privacy laws, so they called police to request a mental health check. Staff explained the situation over the phone, and the police, rather than visit the shelter to assess Emma, told staff to call them back if they noticed any more odd behavior.
My eyes could fall out of my head from rolling them so hard.
Yeah.
Any other odd behavior other than her selling all of her personal belongings or giving them away, which is one of the number one signs that someone is planning to complete suicide, and also that the furniture is talking to her? You need more
Yeah.
than that?
You should have been there. You
I should
know?
have known that the shelter staff did what they were supposed to, and the fucking
Yeah.
police were the ones who didn't.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
So during this time, a concerned roommate encouraged Emma to spend less time at the shelter by taking out a membership at the Y and visiting the library as often as she could. and she also strongly advised Emma to call her mom.
It's good.
So on Tuesday, November 20th, Emma visited the YMCA to get a membership. Surveillance video shows her entering and exiting the building 4 times in a 14-minute period. Emma seems really nervous. She's seen peering out the glass doors as if she's waiting for someone or hiding from someone or something. Some people think she's holding something in her hands, like a cell phone, but others suspect she's just fidgeting with her fingers. Like it's
Hmm.
really grainy footage, so you can't really tell. But so the next day, on November 21st, Emma arranged to have a tow truck driver pick her up from the shelter and drive to Souk, British Columbia. Suki? I don't know if I should have looked up the pronunciation, but they were going to drive there and tow her van back to Victoria. And the driver said she was upbeat during this ride and talked about her plan to surprise her family by moving back home to Perth. And the driver recalled her looking up at the snow on the mountains, telling him she couldn't wait to get home where she could see the sun and the snow.
So sad.
I
And
know.
it's tricky with mental health because frequently different types of mental illnesses will have those moments where there's a lot of clarity and quote unquote normalcy,
Mm-hmm.
and that can often be tricky to navigate because it looks like someone's okay when really it's just a moment of okayness.
Yeah, and that'll become more clear um, in the rest of the story that she really like goes back and forth between clarity and total disorientation.
Hmm.
So on November 23rd, Emma ended up calling her mom, Shelley, in tears around midnight and said she wanted to come home. Shelley assured her that all arrangements would be made for her to come home immediately. Emma was anxious but wouldn't say what was bothering her, but she promised her mom that she was safe. Hours later, Emma called back in the early morning of the 24th and said, "Mom, don't come out. I'm just going to stay here in Victoria to work things out on my own. I'll be okay. Don't come." Shelley was worried and could sense something was really wrong, but respected Emma's wishes and canceled the flight. Later that same night, Emma called her again to say that she'd changed her mind again. She wanted to come home, but she was overwhelmed and needed her mom to come to Victoria to help her pack her belongings. And her mom immediately booked another flight.
It's got to be so hard as a mom.
Yeah, like you want to respect your child's wishes because she's 25 and you want her to be like independent, but you're also like something's clearly wrong. Like what do I
Hmm.
do here, you know?
Yeah, it reminds me of when you and I lived in Warren, and my mom and my dad recruited my uncle to come take me away because I was in such a bad state mentally.
Mhm.
It's like, even with things that have happened between me and my mom, if she physically couldn't do it, I know she would find a way to do it. Um,
Mhm.
and just like, I know I would do that for you, for Chloe, for anyone that I was close to that I loved, and even, help figure it out, do whatever. So I can't imagine that concern wanting to go save her, but also wanting to respect her wishes and her boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, a close acquaintance reported seeing a very anxious Emma by the harbor a day or two before she vanished. And when he asked their circle of friends what was wrong, they explained that she was concerned about her mother arriving in Victoria. On the morning of Sunday, November 25th, Emma called her mom again to tell her that she changed her mind again. And according to Shelley, Emma sounded calm and more confident during the call, but there was still sadness in her voice. Shelley agreed not to come, but she kept her bags packed. The same day, Emma had to have her van towed again from the spot that the first tow truck driver had dropped it off at, and she brought it to a parking lot at a hotel called the Chateau Victoria. Emma's mother was growing increasingly concerned, and she decided to dial the number that Emma had last called her from. She'd assumed that the caller ID, Sandy Marion, was a friend Emma had been staying with. When she speaks with a staff member, she's shocked to find out that Emma had been living in the women's shelter on and off since the winter of 2011.
Oh my God, to find that out like that. Holy shit.
I know. Later in the evening of the 27th, Emma called her mom again in tears, asking her to come and help her come home. Shelley immediately books the next flight out, which was for the next morning.
I'm glad she kept her bags packed. Because I was
Yeah.
thinking, like, I feel like me as a human being, I probably would have just flown out there anyways and then, like, stayed in a hotel and waited to hear from her again.
Yeah.
But again, you don't, I mean, I'm not judging. I just, like, I'm glad
No,
she kept her bags packed.
definitely. So Emma's last call to her mother was in the early morning of November 28th, around 4:30 a.m. She told her mom, "Don't come, Mom, not today." Shelley said there was noticeable change in Emma's voice, which made her extremely worried. And the last words Emma said to her mom were, "I don't know how I can face you."
And that's so terrifying because you know that what that feeling is like when you're a child and like you've been not necessarily hiding things, but not necessarily being fully truthful.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't want to disappoint your parents, but your parents at that point are really just like, I want to help you.
Yeah. They're like, "We're not here to judge. We just want you to be okay."
Right, we'll talk about this later, but right now I just want to come and get you and bring you home.
Mm-hmm. So Shelley, Emma's mom, ended up talking with other family members about the situation. And a few family members told her things like, "Don't worry about it. She's an adult. We need to respect Emma's independence. She's 25. She's going to figure it out." But Shelley knew deep down that something wasn't right. With a history of mental illness in the family, her mother was really worried and felt that Emma needed her.
Good
So
gut
she
feeling, mama.
agreed. Shelley put everything on hold and she took a flight out that same afternoon to go get or at least go see Emma and just be with her. At 7 a.m. the same day on November 28th, Emma went to the Chateau Victoria, the hotel where she had her van, and she was really upset because she found a notice on her van telling her that she needed to move it or else it would be towed. So Emma went inside and asked a staff member if she'd be allowed to move the van a different day, and they allowed it. And there's surveillance of this interaction. At 8:23 a.m., Emma is seen on video surveillance at a 7-Eleven using her debit card to buy a $200 prepaid credit card. She was wearing a beige winter jacket, camo pants, and had several bags with her. On the footage, you can see her lingering in the store and peering out the window again, like she had previously, and she looked really nervous. At 10 a.m., a friend named Julian was riding the bus and saw Emma standing on the edge of the sidewalk, and he said it looked like she was just like right on the edge, like one more step and she would have been in the busy street. At this point, she was wearing a puffy, light-colored coat, her hood was up, she was carrying plastic bags in each hand, and had more bags over her shoulder and across her chest. Julian got off the bus a few stops early and approached Emma to ask if she was okay and if she needed help. Before doing this, he went in to register for his health card as planned and returned to find Emma still there, standing motionless on the corner. He stepped onto the street in front of her and looked into her hoodie to ask if she needed help, and Emma slowly shook her head as if to say no. He stood with her for a little while and then decided to leave. He didn't think he could do anything.
It's so hard.
Yeah,
How do you help someone that
that'd be
doesn't
so
want help?
scary.
Mm-hmm.
In the early afternoon of this day, a friend saw Emma at a local soup kitchen and approached her. Emma said she wasn't feeling well and that she couldn't talk. He said that he offered her a hug, and Emma responded with a horrified look and said no before walking away, which was completely out of character for her. Around 1 p.m., a witness saw Emma looking vacant-eyed, slowly shuffling along on Pandora Street. Her hair looked as though it had been freshly washed. She was carrying several white plastic bags, an orange purse, and she was wearing the same camo pants and a white fleece jacket. The witness later reported this to the police and eventually heard back from the Victoria Police Department, who took a full report.
Thank God.
That afternoon, 2 people reported seeing Emma on Douglas Street. They were so concerned by Emma's strange behavior of walking back and forth in the street looking confused and lost that they immediately called the police, who took the report. However, it's unclear if they ever followed up. And this is the
Oh, of
first
course
time
not.
that 911 was called about Emma that day. Yeah, they
Quick,
didn't
babe.
take her seriously, I don't think.
No. Is my commentary okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, I don't want to sound like I know it all. I just know a lot about schizophrenia for some reason.
No, you're fine. I That's exactly what I think it was. Like, I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to be a I'm not qualified to diagnose, but it sounds like it was some kind of mental illness that
Yeah.
was untreated and got really bad.
Yeah, if I had to put money on it, I would say schizophrenia.
Yeah. So there was another witness who said that they saw Emma walking downtown with an older man that afternoon, but no description of the older man was ever provided, and they never found out who he was or if it was actually Emma. So at 5:54 p.m., Emma used her debit card to buy a cell phone at the same 7-Eleven she'd been at earlier in the day when she bought that credit card, the prepaid credit card.
Interesting. But then she used the debit card to buy the phone. Interesting.
Yeah, yeah, it was weird. Video surveillance shows her paying for the phone, and then she lingers in the store by the doors, the same way she had before, looking nervous and peering outside as if someone was out there and she's afraid of them. And the cell phone that she purchased at that time was never activated.
If it had just been activated.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that would have given something else.
I wonder what I don't know. We'll talk about theories, but yeah.
Yeah.
According to witnesses, Emma returned to the shelter around 6 p.m. that night and told a staff member that her mother was on her way. The staff member said that Emma became visibly upset and anxious, then stormed out of the shelter. Another resident ran after Emma but wasn't able to catch up with her. At 6:10 p.m., a taxi driver picked Emma up near the shelter and she asked him to take her to the airport. Then suddenly she changed her mind and told the driver that she couldn't afford the $60 taxi ride and she asked to be dropped off exactly where she'd been picked up. Which is really strange because at this time it was said that Emma had $2,000 to $3,000 in her bank account and she'd just purchased that prepaid credit card, so she could have paid
Mhm.
for the taxi ride. When the taxi pulled up to where she'd just been picked up from, Emma asked the driver if she could just sit in the taxi for a little bit, and he agreed. The
Wow.
driver said her, right?
That's generous because a lot of the
Mm
time they would charge you for every second your
hmm.
ass
Mm
is in
hmm.
that seat.
It was probably clear she was going through it.
Yeah.
So the driver said her behavior was really strange and that she became very anxious and paranoid when she heard the dispatch radio go off. She asked the driver, "Why is there noise coming out of that?" And then quickly paid the fare with her debit card and got out of the cab.
So, and then like the fact that, I mean, I don't know what these look like, but the fact that she didn't recognize that it was a radio, it's kind of like she really was not aware of her surroundings at all.
That's what it seems like.
Or like she was half in the real world and half in the world that her brain had created for her.
Hmm. This is just like my own personal thoughts, but like I kind of wonder if she had well, it seems like she did struggle with some kind of mental illness like from a young age, but I wonder if like something traumatic happened to her that kind of set it off to get
Mm-hmm.
worse because it
Right.
seemed like it just like ramped up really quickly, you know? At 6:15 p.m., an acquaintance of Emma named Dennis saw her standing barefoot on the corner looking disoriented and paranoid in front of the Empress Hotel. It seemed like she was unable to cross the street. He asked her if she was looking for someone or if someone was following her. Based on the way she was acting, very paranoid, he wondered if she was being followed. Emma didn't really respond, but she just like kept looking around. She eventually asked him to walk with her for a little bit, and he started asking her a bunch of questions like what are you doing? Where are you going? And Emma was visibly irritated and uncomfortable with all the questions, so she told him she'd go on a walk on her own. So
That's
around
hard.
7, yeah, around 7, Dennis went into a nearby restaurant to call the police and he waited until they showed up. When they did get there, he felt comfortable leaving because he assumed that she was safe in their care.
Sorry, Dennis, but your assumption was wrong, I'm sure,
Yeah.
because fuck the police.
Hmm. At 7:15, police found Emma barefoot and she was holding her shoes. The officers assessed her for about 45 minutes outside of the hotel. According to police notes, Emma didn't engage with the officers. She would only give one-worded answers or just nod her head yes or shake her head no. By 8 p.m., the officers decided she was not a threat to herself or anyone else, and they watched her walk away. This is the last confirmed sighting of Emma.
I'm not a police officer. I don't live in Canada. I don't know what the rules are, but I just feel like someone who, like, they have record of people calling about her multiple times, and they said, call if you notice anything else. And she's walking around carrying her shoes, but she's barefoot, which obviously
Yeah.
is not the smartest thing to do in the streets. So in that way, I would think that kind of is like she is a danger to herself.
Yeah.
And how do you have any information when she's barely answering you? So at this point, why can't you intervene and take her to the hospital?
Right. Like, do
I don't
something. I don't know.
understand. Yeah, I don't know what the rules or the laws are, but to me it just seems like very flippant disregard for her life
Mm-hmm.
or her as a
Yeah.
human. Like, oh, this is just some transient person. They probably judged her incorrectly and then just said, well, we spent 45 minutes with her, we're good. Like, it just seems
Yeah.
very.
This is just an assumption, but I feel like they probably just assumed she was like strung out on drugs or like just
Yep.
some, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better word, junkie. Like when
Yeah.
I don't think she was. I think she just had a mental break, you know.
No, I completely agree. From what you're saying, I don't think it had anything to do with current drug use. Maybe, I
Mhm.
mean, because she was so closed off, another theory that I had was maybe she had done drugs at one point, maybe some acid or something like that, and it had changed her brain chemistry because it can do that. And
Maybe.
then that triggered it. But if she had been suffering from mental health problems or having issues since she was a child, per her own journal, and there's mental health in the family, mental health or mental illness in the
Mhm.
family, it's got to be more than that. And I don't know. I just feel like, again, this is Canada, but I'm gonna take this from a American perspective. I think it's insane that the police will intervene when there's a young black man walking down the street wearing a hoodie, carrying Skittles in his pocket, and
Yeah.
they gun him down because they think that he's got a gun. But this is a white woman, and she's not okay, and they talk to her for 45 minutes and do nothing. It's very pick
Mhm.
and choose to me, and it just is disgusting. And the fact that it seems like this Canadian police system, or whatever you want to call it, is so much like ours here in the US.
Mhm. Yep, I agree. But the identity of the two officers were protected by privacy laws, and the details of the conversation they had have never been released.
That's no,
Shelley, Emma's
you
mom.
are a public officer. I'm sorry, can I freak out for 1 second?
No, go ahead.
You are a public officer. I'm assuming that it works the same way where our taxes as the citizens of the country pay your fucking paycheck. If this
Mhm.
girl is missing, why do your identities need protected? No.
Yeah.
I want your badge number. I want your full first and last legal government name. I want your social security number. I want the first name of the street that you lived on. I want your childhood best friend. I'm going to steal your identity. And I also want to know all of the information that you have on this innocent human that you didn't want to help multiple times, whether it was those two individuals each time or the police system at all, because you're in it and you're part of it. And they could have done nothing wrong, but they're incriminating themselves by not giving out their information. Why are you doing this? Like
Yeah.
that's not okay. I don't think that should be allowed.
Yeah.
And if it were this
Yeah,
day and
I
age,
agree.
it probably would have been recorded and we probably could have found out who it was.
Yeah. Like she should be the priority. Protecting your privacy is not the priority here. Finding this
No,
missing
you
girl
are,
who needed
yeah,
help is the
you,
priority.
you took a job to serve and protect, and right now you're only serving and protecting yourself, and that's disgusting. So you need to quit your fucking job and go live in a tree for a little bit, like Emma did, and reevaluate your fucking life because it's not about you.
Mhm.
Oh, this just pisses me off. Even if they didn't release it to the public, at least release it to the family or someone, the investigators. I'm sure they got some of it, but just something rather than just being little cowards, little pansies.
Yeah, the family didn't get anything either because Shelley, Emma's mom, sent in a Freedom of Information request in May of 2015, and it was denied with no reason.
How is that even okay?
What would the reason be? Like, we care about our officers more than we care about your daughter? Like,
We're protecting our asses because we know that these officers did something wrong by not doing more, and because we said call if there's anything else, and this person was called in about multiple times, and we still didn't do anything because we fucking suck and we know it. But we're just gonna ride off the backs of all of these citizens of this country and make all this money and have all this power, and then not serve or protect anyone because we fucking suck. Oh,
yep. It's always something with the cops in these stories.
it is always.
Shelley arrived at the shelter around 11 p.m. and learned that Emma hadn't claimed her bed that night. And shortly after midnight, shelter staff reported Emma as a missing person to the police. On November 29th, Chateau Victoria, the hotel where Emma had left her van, had arranged for a towing company to come and get Emma's van. Police found it at the towing lot hours later. It contained almost all of her possessions, including her passport, laptop, journals, camera, and recently borrowed library books. The police then had the van towed to their lot instead.
They're more concerned about the car than they were the actual fucking human being.
So the same day, Shelley goes back to the shelter during each shift change, and she's able to talk to people and learn that Emma had become depressed and possibly suicidal, and that she'd been growing more and more paranoid, erratic, and fearful in the 2 weeks leading up to her disappearance. Between the end of November and December 2nd, 2 witness reports claimed to have seen Emma, but they weren't confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
On December 5th at 11:17 a.m., the $200 prepaid credit card Emma bought was flagged for use at a gas station. They looked into this, and it turned out to be a man who said he found the card on the side of the road. And this man was brought to the police station to be questioned and eventually was cleared after passing a polygraph test.
Which we know
Which
how reliable that is.
I was about to say, I don't have any faith in polygraph tests really. Like,
No. And I don't know. I honestly, for me, I believe he probably did find it on the side of the highway,
yeah,
or the side of the road, because that just seems more feasible. But it's still like, did we really carry out the proceedings the correct way with checking in with this man? But
mm-hmm.
what, you can only hold people for so long, blah blah blah. I don't know, but it just, polygraph doesn't seem like the correct way to go.
Yeah. Maybe they did other things to clear him, but that's the only thing that I found.
Okay.
This man called Emma's mom 3 different times and told her that he had been drinking on a daily basis at the time that he found the card, and he was too drunk to remember that night when he had found it. He knew that it was still sealed and was certain he'd waited about a week to use it to buy a carton of cigarettes. He still claims he can only guess where he may have found the card, but he's not totally sure.
I don't know. I feel like someone who did something, it's like half and half. Like he's doing this to cover his ass, or he feels genuinely bad and wants to try to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'd like to think it's the latter.
I don't know. In May of 2014, in Gastown, British Columbia, what seemed to be an irritated man was captured on surveillance at a clothing store in downtown Vancouver with a crumpled up missing persons poster that was Emma's. The owner of the store reported that the man said, quote, "It's one of those missing persons posters, except she's not missing. She's my girlfriend and she ran away because she hates her parents." The owner immediately called the police, but the man was gone before they arrived. The
What the
security
fuck?
footage is grainy and shows a man with a noticeable limp and flame tattoos on his arm. This man has never been identified. Yeah.
I feel like it probably isn't. He probably also had mental health issues. But the hates her parents part,
I
that,
I don't
ooh.
I don't know. I don't know. It's just so weird. Like, there's a 6-part documentary coming out soon, which I'm going to talk about at the end of this, but they kind of talk about it a bit, and it's just, I don't know. I don't think it was like a mental health thing from what I've seen. I don't really know how to explain it. I'll link the videos to like the trailers and stuff, and you'll see
Mm-hmm.
the footage of him. But
And how far away was this from where she was living? The store? Was it
Vic,
in the town?
I'm not sure. So she was in Victoria.
British Columbia, Canada.
Where's Vancouver?
I think they're somewhat close together. I don't know. I'm not good at geography, that's for sure.
Okay, so it's like 4 hours away from where she was living.
So it's weird that that happened in that store there, but I'm sure the missing posters were everywhere. And if that was really like a boyfriend or whatever, he could have gotten anywhere
Yeah.
because they have, taxis and bus systems. So I don't know. Just is
Mm-hmm.
weird to me.
It is very weird. So, following Emma's disappearance, a search team, which was comprised of friends, family, and volunteers, searched Victoria and the communities of Vancouver Island. They searched trails, parks, and smaller islands. Eventually, the target area widened to include the British Columbia mainland and locations across Canada and the United States. The family hired a private investigator who worked on the case for over a year and couldn't find any leads on where Emma might have gone.
Holy shit.
As you can probably guess, several psychics and mediums provided input as well, but she still hasn't been found. There have been several unconfirmed sightings in Fernwood Square, Goldstream Park, and the Inner Harbor. Several witnesses have reported that her missing poster had been torn down in downtown Eastside. A witness actually said that they believed they saw Emma ripping down her own poster off the wall, but that was never confirmed.
Interesting. I mean, I wouldn't doubt it
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
because if you don't want to be found, you know?
Mm-hmm. Staff at a hunting and fishing store reported a woman who resembled Emma had come in and asked how to disappear, claiming that she had a stalker who followed her from Ontario to Victoria and then to Vancouver.
Oh, wow. My
So there's
fear is
like,
like, what if it's not a mental illness and someone was actually following her that caused her to act like this?
yeah,
That's terrifying.
that's what gets me about this story is there's so many different things that could have happened. Like, it just goes all over the place, you know?
Yeah. It's like that movie, The Invisible Man. Have you seen
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yeah.
Like, and that's really far fetched, but you never know what people will do. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
when no one believes you or seems to take you seriously, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
And to disappear probably seems the safest.
Mm-hmm. So there were two separate tips in early 2014. A hitchhiker matching Emma's description was seen on Highway 3 near her family's farm. The second sighting was in Slocan Valley, about 30 minutes away from where another family member lived. And all of these sightings are also unconfirmed.
So hard with witness sightings or like whatever
Mm-hmm.
because how do you know unless you really see the person or you see like a specific identifier, like a tattoo, a birthmark, something that they had that was like individual to them. It's like okay, they match the description, but how many other people in the world match that description too?
Yeah, and she didn't have any tattoos. She was beautiful, but like there's a lot of other women that I feel like could be mistaken for her if
Yeah.
you see her like passing by in a car or like something like that.
Right. And in that one
Um,
part where you told us about that one day where she was seen multiple times, she was wearing three different
hmm
jackets. So you can't use clothes as
yeah,
an identifier, and if you're seeing her from a distance, all you have is build, and that's all a guess too. Clothing layer, there's so many
yeah,
different factors that could change what you're seeing, and also, confirmation bias where you see what you want to see.
yeah, definitely. So in June of 2018, a new witness came forward and said he was on his way to his job and had to get there pretty early, about 5 a.m. on November 29th, 2012. He said he saw a young woman darting back and forth on the side of the road. He said that she seemed to be in distress, so he pulled over and asked if she needed a ride or any help. She got into his car and he noticed that she wasn't wearing any shoes and she was soaking wet like she'd been walking around all night. When she got into the car, she asked if he would drive her to Colwood to visit a girlfriend. He didn't want to be late to work, so he told her he could bring her a little bit closer to Colwood but wouldn't be able to drive her all the way there. After they drove for a little while, he dropped her off next to a 24-hour gas station. He said that the moment she got out of the car, her behavior shifted back to being paranoid, and she started darting back and forth in the street in the direction of Colwood. He said he didn't know who he picked up that morning until long after the incident took place. He contacted the police, who told him to contact Crime Stoppers and tell them about this interaction with Emma. When there was never any follow-up to this tip, he got in touch with Emma's mother, Shelley, and he also got in touch with a longtime advocate in the search for Emma, who was named Kimberly Bordage. Kimberly interviewed him at length for a podcast that was released in November of 2019. It's called The Search for Emma Fillipoff, which I have not listened to, but I plan to.
Mm-hmm.
In early December of 2018, search and rescue expert Kim Cooper and Kimberly Bordage traveled to Victoria to conduct a search. And this is a quote from Kimberly. She said, "We started the canine search by working with the last known point in View Royal, where William let her out of the vehicle." William is the guy who came forward in 2018. "We searched the immediate vicinity by Craigflower Bridge, reeds around the Gorge Waterway, places that people normally wouldn't pass through. We then moved out of the wooded areas nearby with low traffic and sections of the Galloping Goose Trail in Colwood. We searched the sunny side of Thetis Lake Woods, a place we knew that Emma liked to visit, more specifically, areas that were less traveled and dead-end roads. The last spot searched between where Emma got out of the car and Colwood were the deep wooded grounds of the Royal Roads Forest. Remote areas in the center that are not well traveled. The search did not yield any results, but it did manage to keep Emma's story in the public eye during the anniversary of her disappearance." So did she make it to Colwood? Did she get picked up somewhere? I don't know.
I have so many thoughts, but I can't put them into like an actual cohesive thing.
Yeah, so like I said, there's a new docuseries coming out from Kimberly Bordage, who is the host of that podcast. And I watched a few of there's a couple previews on YouTube, and there's interviews with Emma's mom, and they do like an age progressed photo of Emma, and they try to do like a photo of the guy in the clothing store and then an age progressed photo of him. It's really interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing like the whole thing.
Will you send, I'm sure you're going to share some of those, but will you send them to me? Because I'd really like to watch them.
Yeah. Yeah. This is one part from those previews that I just wanted to add in, but Emma's mother has been the biggest advocate in the search effort. She's kept her landline all this time because that's the only number that Emma would know. She's had the same number for like over 32 years now.
Wow. If
Yeah.
the phone company ever tries to like cancel that because they're going out of business, I will personally donate money to make sure that does not
Yeah.
go out of business.
Me too. Anyone with information on Emma's whereabouts is asked to contact the Victoria Police non-emergency line, or you can contact Crime Stoppers, and I'm going to put those numbers in the show notes because I want to make sure I get the correct numbers. But that is the story of Emma Fillipoff. I really hope that she is just either doesn't want to be found and is living a really happy life safe somewhere. That's the number one for me. I just hope she's like alive, you know?
Yeah. My
And
two
just like,
philosophies. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
My two theories, philosophies, guesses, whatever, would be she is still alive and she's probably closer to either home or where she started than what they think, but just hid very well and became part of like a houseless people's encampment or something along those lines. Because, again, my theory or my guess is that she had schizophrenia or is schizophrenic, and a lot of what I've seen and like learned is that people like that will kind of hide, because not only do they, in her case, she's ashamed of what's happened and like she didn't want to face her mom, but you kind of lose your identity. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then my other theory is that she's probably passed and it was either accidental or like someone murdered her at where we left off. To me, it doesn't seem like she was quite at the point of suicide because
Mm-hmm.
she was still like, I want to go home, I don't, like back and forth. But I mean, obviously, it could be anything. But when they said that they
Yeah,
started to look within the United States, I don't know how she would have gotten here because her passport was in her van. Um,
that's true. Yeah.
so I mean, who knows? With her being such a transient, she could have joined a group of transient individuals and traveled, or, gotten on a bus. If she had $2,000 to $3,000 in her bank account, she could have traveled to who knows where in like the northern
Yeah, she
territories of
never touched her
Canada.
bank account.
Oh, that's right. But oh, and that $200
Mm-hmm.
card. Shit. Well, you never know, hitchhiking or whatever, and those northern territories
Mm-hmm.
of Canada are very rural. So God, that's so sad.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
and something that made me really like sad is in one of the previews, the person interviewing Shelley, Emma's mom, was like, "Would you stop searching if Emma called you and said, 'I'm okay, I'm safe, I just don't want to be found?'" And her mom was like, "Absolutely. If Emma called me, that's why I have the landline. Like, if
yep.
she's okay and doesn't want to be found, I will not continue searching against her wishes. I just want to know she's okay."
What a good mom. Did the dad ever come back into
Yeah.
the picture with like helping to search or anything, or not that you know of?
Um, I assume we'll find that out in the documentary. I didn't see
Mm-hmm.
anything from the dad. The vibe that I've gotten off the limited information I know about him is that he's was kind of like not really part of it, but I could be
Mm-hmm.
totally wrong. I do know that Shelley went to Vancouver and spent a lot of time with like the homeless community and just like handing out posters and talking to everybody and just like looking for her because she, at least at first, she believed that Emma had some kind of like mental break and maybe forgot who she was or where she was and was living in one of the homeless communities. I'm not sure what she believes today, but yeah.
I bet. I honestly, I just feel like that's such a high possibility
Yeah,
that
I
she
agree.
is there and she could have cut her hair or dyed it or done any sort of thing that makes her unrecognizable. And unfortunately, when the police are involved, because we criminalize houseless and homelessness, at least in the United States, I'm sure Canada is similar, that they don't want to talk to anyone. So I think it's really great that the mom went herself because I think
Hmm.
people are more likely to talk to someone who doesn't have that connection and is simply just looking for their family member. But from what
Yeah.
I know, there's also a semblance of like a community and a protectiveness where if, Emma had said at some point, I don't want to be found, I don't want to show my mother what I've become, that people might be protecting her, which is a good thing if she's alive. But
Yeah. And that was
so
another
she
thing
would
with
be,
the guy in the clothing store. It was kind of like, I don't know if theory is the right word, but he saw Emma's mom in Vancouver bringing all this media attention, and he got mad and tried to sabotage it by going in to this clothing store and ripping down the poster, like sabotage it in some way.
oh, that's a good thought. Okay, I
Yeah.
didn't even think about making that connection because, like you said, it's about
Mhm.
4 hours difference. So
Mhm.
interesting. Oh God, I hate these unsolved shits.
I do too, but
I just want to
they're the
know.
most interesting to me.
They're so fascinating, and again, we're bringing
Mhm.
more awareness. I mean, the
Definitely.
documentary is coming out, but most of the story stuff that you were talking about was in 2019, and then the pandemic hit, which changed everything in the world. So
Yeah.
who knows what could have happened, and I'm very interested to watch the documentary. But wow, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
that was something I'd never heard about, and I love when you bring that to the table because I think I know a lot of stuff with true crime and missing persons, but there's so much more out there, and then you just bring it, and I'm like, excuse me.
Yeah, I guess this case is like it was huge and continues to be pretty big in Canada, and it happened like not that long ago, and I'd never heard of it until 2020.
Yeah.
So
So it started in like 10 to 11 years
2012.
ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So she would be what, 36 now?
Mm-hmm.
36, 37? Wow.
Something like
Well,
that, yeah.
now I'm gonna have to do some more research and get her the image of her and her age progressed photo blasted into my mind because if I ever see
Yes.
her, I want to say something. It's just a thing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
thank you. Very, very well done. Very good info. Very
Thank
nice
you.
burp.
Thank you.
Yes.
I see that we are running low on time, so I will wrap this up.
Yes, and for once I don't have much more to say.
Wow. Incredible.
Shocking.
All right. So, if you would like to follow us on Instagram, our Instagram is educate me. I had a brain fart. Our Instagram is educate me papa. If you want to email us, you can do so at educatemepapa@gmail.com. If you want to find us on Facebook, it's educate me papa dash the podcast. I almost had another one. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yeah, I think
Educate Me
that's it.
Papa. And TikTok, which is also Educate Me
Oh
Papa.
yes,
Basically, if you
yes,
search Educate Me Papa and look for two bitches in some ghost costumes, that us.
yes. Hell yeah.
Yes.
All right,
Well,
friends, and with that, we would like to thank you for listening.
thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much for listening or watching. And I love your ears forever. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank
All
you.
right, we're out. See you next time. Toodaloo.
We love
Bye.
you. Goodbye.